20 years ago, Sarah walked away from the love of her life to pursue a dream that left her empty. Now, standing at the edge of a misty vineyard in Napa Valley where they once promised forever, she faces a choice: walk away again or fight for the second chance she doesn't deserve. Inside the tasting room of the winery Elena built from nothing, the woman who still owns her heart is about to pour wine for the tourists, unaware that her past just drove up the gravel road. Some loves never die. They just wait, aging like fine wine, for the courage to uncork again. The morning fog clung to the rolling hills of Napa Valley, wrapping Elena's vineyard in ethereal silver. Sarah's rental car crunched over the gravel driveway, past the hand-painted sign, Moretti Estate Wines, family owned. Since 2010, her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. 20 years. 20 years since she'd seen that face, heard that laugh, felt those hands. 20 years since she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. You're really going in there? Her sister's voice crackled through the car's speakers. Sarah, maybe this isn't I have to, Maya. I've spent 2 decades running from this. Through the tasting room's large windows, Sarah could see her. Elena moved between oak barrels and wine bottles with practiced grace, her silver-streaked black hair pulled back in a whiz braid. At 52, she was more beautiful than Sarah remembered sun-kissed skin, laugh lines around her eyes, strong arms from years of working the land. Sarah's breath caught. Time had been impossibly kind. The bell above the door chimed as Sarah entered. Elena looked up from pouring a Cabernet for a couple of tourists, and the bottle tilted dangerously. Wine splashed onto the tasting bar. Her dark eyes went wide with shock. "I'm so sorry," Elena stammered to the tourists, grabbing a towel. "Just give me one moment." She excused herself, wiping her wine-stained hands on her apron as she crossed the rustic tasting room. When she stood before Sarah, her eyes blazed with something between fury and longing. "You have 30 seconds to tell me why you're here before I ask you to leave my property." Sarah had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. Every word disappeared. I saw your mother's obituary. I'm so sorry. I know I have no right to be here, but no, you don't." Eleanor's voice cracked slightly. "You don't get to show up after 20 years because my mother died. You don't get to walk back into my life when it's convenient for you." "It's not convenient. Nothing about this is convenient." "Elena, please, just 5 minutes. 5 minutes." "You want 5 minutes?" Elena laughed bitterly. "I gave you 5 years, Sarah. 5 years of my heart, my dreams, my future. And you threw it away for a job in New York without even a real goodbye." The tourists were starting to notice. Elena grabbed Sarah's arm, her touch electric despite the anger, and pulled her through the tasting room, out the back door, and into the vineyard. Rows of grapevines stretched toward the horizon, heavy with late-season fruit. The fog swirled around them as they walked between the vines. Sarah's carefully constructed walls crumbled. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I destroyed us. But I need you to know not a single day has passed that I haven't regretted leaving you." Not one. Elena stopped walking, turning to face her among the vines they'd once dreamed of planting together. "You regretted it? That's supposed to mean something?" Elena stood surrounded by her grapevines, arms crossed, creating distance between them. The morning sun was burning through the fog, revealing the full beauty of the land she'd cultivated. "I waited for you, Sarah. 6 months I waited for you to come back, to realize what you'd given up. Do you know what that did to me?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I was 29 and terrified. The partnership at the firm, it felt like my only chance to prove I wasn't just some small-town girl playing lawyer. My father had just told me I'd never make it, that I should come back and work at his hardware store. I wanted to prove him wrong so badly that I couldn't see that you already had everything that mattered." Elena's voice softened despite herself. "We had plans, Sarah. This vineyard, it was supposed to be ours. You promised me you'd be here when I planted the first vines. You promised me forever, and then you just vanished. I didn't vanish. I wrote 3 phone calls in 6 months and a dozen emails explaining how complicated everything was. That's vanishing. Elena reached out, touching a cluster of ripe grapes, her fingers gentle on the fruit. I planted these vines alone, every single one, and every time I dug a hole, I imagined you beside me. It took me 5 years to stop looking up, expecting to see you. Sarah moved closer, stopping just short of touching. That weekend, we drove up here from San Francisco. We were broke and sleeping in your beat-up Honda, but we walked through someone else's vineyard, and you said, "Someday this will be ours," Elena finished quietly. I remember. You said you'd handle the business side while I made the wine. You said we'd grow old together, drinking our own vintage and watching the sunset from the porch. And I meant it. God, Elena, I meant every word. Sarah's voice broke. I made partner at 35. Got married at 37 to a woman who looked good on paper and felt nothing like home. Divorced at 41. Threw myself into work until I had a breakdown at 48 and realized I'd spent 20 years trying to outrun the only real thing I'd ever had. Elena finally turned, her eyes searching Sarah's face. You got married? To someone I never loved. Not really. How could I? You don't understand. I've spent 2 decades comparing every woman to you. Every touch, every laugh, every conversation. And they all fell short because they weren't you. The air between them crackled with unspoken words. Unfinished sentences, 20 years of longing compressed into the small space between grapevines. Why now? Elena whispered. Why show up now when I've finally built the dream we shared alone? Sarah reached into her jacket pocket, pulling out a worn photograph, the 2 of them at that very vineyard 20 years ago, sitting on the hood of Elena's Honda, Elena's arms wrapped around Sarah from behind, both of them laughing at some forgotten joke. Because I'm dying, Elena, stage 3 breast cancer. And I realized that I could face death with 100 regrets, or I could face it knowing I tried to fix the one that mattered most. They sat in the dirt between the vine rows for what felt like hours, though it was merely minutes, navigating the minefield of 2 decades apart. Finally, Elena made a decision. I have to finish the afternoon tastings, but there's a spot on the eastern hill where we watch the sunset, the winemakers and I, after harvest days. Meet me there at 7. She stood, brushing dirt from her jeans, offering her hand to help Sarah up. If you're not there, I'll know you changed your mind. Sarah took her hand, feeling the calluses earned from years of physical work. I'll be there. I promise. Don't promise me anything yet, Elena said softly. We have 20 years of catching up to do. 20 years of hurt to work through. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it right this time, slowly, honestly. Sarah nodded, understanding the boundary being set. Slowly, honestly, I can do that. As Sarah turned to walk back to her car, Elena called out once more. Sarah, I'm glad you came. I'm furious and confused and terrified, but I'm glad. Sarah spent the afternoon driving through the valley, remembering all the dreams they'd spun together. At 6:45, she drove back up the gravel road, following the hand-painted signs to the eastern hill. A simple wooden bench sat overlooking the valley, a blanket draped over it, and a bottle of wine waiting with 2 glasses. Elena arrived at 7:02. Her hair loose now, wearing jeans and a soft flannel shirt that smelled like oak and earth. Hi, she said, sitting beside Sarah on the bench. Hi. Sarah smiled, and for the first time in 20 years, it reached her eyes. Elena opened the wine, a 2015 Cabernet, the year she'd finally stopped crying over Sarah and poured 2 glasses. They watched the sun paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson as they began to talk. Really talk. Sarah told her about the empty Manhattan apartment, the hollow victories at the firm, the moment she looked in the mirror and didn't recognize herself. Elena shared her struggles to get the vineyard established, her mother's long illness, the relationships that almost worked but never quite did that as the sun touched the horizon. Elena reached across the bench, letting her fingers intertwine with Sarah's. This is terrifying. I know. You hurt me so badly. I don't know if I can trust you again. I know. But I'm here. And I'm not running this time. Whatever you need, time, space, proof, I'll give it to you. Elena squeezed her hand. I need honesty about everything. Your treatment, your prognosis, how you're really feeling. I need to know I'm not a bucket list item. You're not. You're the reason I want to live long enough to have a bucket list. Sarah's thumb traced circles on Elena's palm. I'm starting chemo Tuesday. It's going to be brutal. I'll lose my hair, I'll be sick, I'll probably be the worst version of myself. And I understand if that's too much to ask. Stop, Elena interrupted. I sat with my mother through 18 months of cancer treatment. I know what it looks like. And if we're doing this, you don't go through it alone. The weight of that statement hung in the air. Not a promise of forever, but a promise of now. Of showing up. Of trying. They sat on that hill until the stars came out, talking and laughing and sometimes crying. When the night grew cold, Elena drove Sarah back to her rental car. At the driver's door, Elena turned to Sarah. One day at a time. That's all I can promise right now. One day at a time is more than I deserve. Elena hesitated, then leaned forward, pressing a soft kiss to Sarah's forehead. Good night, Sarah. Come back tomorrow if you want. We're bottling the new vintage. You could help. I'd like that. As Sarah drove away, both women felt something they hadn't felt in 20 years. Hope. Not the naive hope of youth, but the hard-won hope of women who'd survived heartbreak and loss and were brave enough to try again. The flame, long dormant, flickered back to life among the vines where it had first ignited. Sarah and Elena's journey wasn't easy. The road ahead held challenges, cancer treatments, old wounds, learning to trust again. But they walked it together through the vineyard rows, one careful step at a time. Some loves are worth fighting for, no matter how much time has passed. Some flames, once rekindled, burn brighter than before because they're fed by wisdom, forgiveness, and the courage to choose love over fear. Are you ready to believe in second chances? If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to be reminded that it's never too late for love. And remember, the bravest thing you can do is show up for the love. You thought you'd lost, your second chance might be waiting for you too.